2:03 a.m., my brother walked out of the office with a USB drive full of fake files, thinking he'd just outsmarted me. What he didn't know was that I built the trap myself. I'm Marianne Whitmore, and this is the story of how I gave my brother a second chance, and how he turned it into a betrayal I saw coming, but hoped wouldn't happen. Have you ever trusted someone so deeply, only to feel that trust unravel one quiet step at a time? Let me know in the comments, what would you have done in my place? Some mistakes don't come crashing through the front door. They show up with a familiar smile and a hopeful voice, holding coffee in one hand and the past in the other. That's how Dylan re-entered my life. It had been 8 months since Mom passed, and I still hadn't moved her framed photo off the corner of my desk. Some days I talked to it. Some days I avoided looking at it altogether. Her presence lingered like the scent of her favorite jasmine tea, subtle but inescapable. The letter she left for me was tucked in the top drawer, the one she sealed in her signature blue envelope and placed inside the folder marked, "For Marianne only." It came with her client list, of course. The real treasure. Not just names and contacts, but years of trust, years of work, years of doing things right. Taped to the outside of that folder was a yellow sticky note, scrawled in her unmistakable handwriting, "Use it wisely, not generously." I read that note more times than I care to admit. When the receptionist called that morning and said Dylan was here, no appointment, no email ahead of time, I froze. It had been over a year since we'd talked properly. I knew he'd moved to Florida after the tech startup failed and his marriage crumbled, but I didn't know he was back in Seattle. I didn't even know he knew where the office was now. He looked tired, like life had wrung him out and hung him back up too soon. His suit had creases in places that suggested it hadn't seen a dry cleaner in weeks, and he had a subtle, almost anxious energy about him, like he was holding himself together by sheer will. "Hey, Mare," he said, using the childhood nickname I hadn't heard in years. "Can we talk?" I nodded. We walked across the street to the Green Cup, the cafe Mom used to frequent before her Thursday client reviews. The barista still recognized me. I ordered almond milk, no sugar. Dylan got black coffee, 2 shots of espresso. He always liked his caffeine with a punch. We found a booth near the window, and he sat across from me, fidgeting with the sleeve of his cup. "Florida? Didn't work out," he said after a while. "The company folded. Rachel left. I'm back." I said nothing. I watched the drizzle on the glass, how the city blurred behind it. "I know I've burned bridges, maybe even lit a few on purpose," he added with a small, tired laugh. "But I've learned a lot. I need a clean slate, Marianne, and I thought, maybe I could help here." I looked at him, really looked. Not the boy who used to sneak Pop-Tarts into our rooms past bedtime. Not the young man who charmed his way into investors' wallets, but a version of Dylan that felt fractured and familiar. Patricia's words came to mind later when I told her what I was considering. "Hiring family isn't a risk," she said, arms crossed in the conference room. "It's a mirror. You sure you want to stare that down every day?" She had been with me since the beginning. When Mom passed, she stayed, even when she could have retired early, out of loyalty or concern or both. Still, I said yes. I gave Dylan a role in client support, modest, manageable, and mostly away from sensitive files. He started the following Monday, and he was good, really good. He made small accounts feel like VIPs. He remembered birthdays, suggested small service upgrades, sent handwritten follow-ups. The younger team loved his energy. Even some of our pickier clients began requesting him directly. "Guy's got charm," Cameron, our head of IT, said one afternoon, looking surprised. Only Patricia stayed cautious. She'd observed Dylan like she was reviewing a quarterly audit, measured, silent, but never disengaged. A few weeks in, I started to relax. Maybe this was the version of Dylan Mom had always hoped would surface. Maybe it had taken failure to bring out humility. And then came the morning I opened my office door to find him standing at my desk. He was flipping through a printed deck, Thick paper, full color, the kind of deck I only shared internally with strategy leads. It had notes on the Davidson Group, a longtime client who trusted us with sensitive restructuring. "Oh, hey," he said casually, not a hint of guilt. "Thought I'd get ahead on this. Looks impressive." I paused in the doorway, unsure of what bothered me more, his access or his assumption. "That's confidential," I said, trying to keep my voice even, "for internal review only." He smiled, unbothered. "Right. Just figured I'd absorb what I could. Be proactive." He left a few minutes later, whistling softly as he walked down the hall. I stared at the spot he'd stood and felt something unnameable settle into my chest. Back at my desk, I opened the top drawer. The envelope was still there, untouched. I brushed my fingers across the sticky note. "Use it wisely, not generously." I hadn't shared it, not yet, but I suddenly couldn't remember if I had locked that drawer the night before. That evening, I stayed late. I paced the office after everyone left, touching the backs of chairs, flipping off light switches one by one. When I returned to my office, I sat in the dark, watching the city twinkle through the rain. I told myself it meant nothing. Just initiative, just curiosity. But in the quiet, Mom's voice surfaced again, as clear as if she were standing behind me. Trust is earned, not shared blindly. And for the first time since hiring Dylan, I wondered if I was hoping too hard to rewrite a story already written. It wasn't the passwords I gave Dylan that I came to regret. It was the silence, the nods, the unsaid permissions that floated between us like assumed truths. Back when we were kids, Dylan and I used to sneak into Mom's office at night. She always locked the drawer with the candy, so of course that's where we looked first. It wasn't really about the jelly beans. It was about the thrill of entering her world. The pens arranged by color, the smell of lavender and toner, the quiet hum of authority. Now, decades later, he was stepping into my world, and again, I was the one leaving drawers just slightly ajar. By midsummer, Dylan was everywhere. Not just physically, though his presence filled rooms easily, but ideologically. His ideas spread faster than I could vet them. He talked about modernizing, scaling faster, relaxing our client vetting process to stay competitive. "Why are we still turning away mid-tier clients?" he asked during one meeting. "We're bleeding opportunity while waiting for the perfect fit." Patricia, seated beside me, raised an eyebrow but said nothing. I cleared my throat. Because integrity doesn't scale. It's maintained, one decision at a time. He didn't argue, not directly, but he leaned back with that smile I'd started to recognize. Not warm, not fake, just unreadable. Later that week, he managed to salvage a floundering account by offering them a lower rate, without approval. The client was thrilled. The staff buzzed with compliments. Even Cameron said, "He's quick. I'll give him that." Quick wasn't always a compliment. That Friday, I stayed late to prep for Monday's leadership huddle. Cameron knocked softly on my open door, holding a tablet. "You have a second?" he asked. I nodded, gesturing to the seat across from me. "There's been some irregular access patterns," he began. Folders Dylan's opened. Nothing catastrophic, but not part of his scope. My stomach sank, but I kept my voice level. "How often?" 3 nights this week. After 10. Same set of directories, client archives, proposal history. It's not technically off limits, but it's not usual. I nodded slowly. "Let it go, but create a mirror directory, one he can find." Cameron blinked. "A dummy set?" "A shadow system. If he's going to keep digging, let's see what he does with what we leave out for him." Cameron hesitated. "What should I call it?" I smiled, tired. "Protocol kinship." He smirked. "That's either poetic or dangerous." Hopefully both. The next morning, I saw Dylan in the break room chatting with Rachel, one of our summer interns. They laughed over something on her screen. He leaned in, pointing at the admin dashboard. "You ever wonder how the access tiers work across departments?" he asked, casual as ever. Not trying to break anything, just curious how deep the levels go. I walked past them, pretending not to hear. It was a small thing, a moment. But that's how it always starts, isn't it? Quiet questions, curiosity dressed up as initiative. That afternoon, we attended a networking mixer downtown, a sleek rooftop bar, expensive hors d'oeuvres, handshakes that lasted a beat too long. Dylan was in his element, confident, polished, charismatic. He pitched our firm like it was already 3 times its size. Growth is about agility, he told a potential partner. You don't win by playing small. I stood beside him, smiling through the burn in my chest. He sounded like he owned the place, like we'd already made every decision he wanted. When we got back to the office, Patricia approached me quietly. "He's talking fast," she said, "and people are starting to listen." I knew what she meant. Dylan had always been magnetic, but now he had momentum, and momentum without brakes can turn dangerous. That night, I stayed even later than usual. I opened the shadow system Cameron built, sleek, believable, filled with half-truths and strategic misdirections. It looked exactly like the real thing, down to the folder names and file formats. I stared at it, thinking about the boy who used to steal Mom's red pens just to see her reaction, the man who once lost a $1 million contract because he promised something he couldn't deliver. I wanted to believe he'd changed, that this version of Dylan, the one who stayed late and charmed clients, was real. But belief wasn't the same as trust, and trust, like Mom always said, wasn't something you gave away. It was something you watched for, protected, and earned over time. I clicked Enable Tracker. The first log came in at 2:07 a.m. Cameron messaged me 5 minutes later. He's in. Shadow system working perfectly, logging everything. I stared at the screen. The name of the file he opened first was one I'd titled intentionally, Legacy Priority Accounts.x. Subtle, just enough bait. I closed my laptop slowly, letting the weight of the moment settle in. Maybe Dylan wasn't stealing. Not yet. Maybe he was just curious. Or maybe he was already too far down the path to notice the danger signs. I wasn't ready to give up on him, but I also wasn't ready to give him my trust. You don't build a trap for someone you hate. You build it for someone you hope, desperately, might stop themselves before stepping in. The first time I realized Dylan might not stop was the night I found the conference room lights on at midnight. I had forgotten my phone charger and returned to the office only to see him hunched over a laptop, alone, intense, like he was decoding something urgent. I didn't interrupt. I watched from the hallway, then quietly turned back. That weekend, I reread Mom's old notebook. The leather cover was worn soft from her hands, the spine barely holding together. When I opened it, a pressed maple leaf slid out and landed on the table. It was pale brown, delicate, fragile, but intact. I remembered that leaf. Dylan had picked it when he was 9, outside Mom's first office, where the windows fogged in the fall and the radiators clanked. He called it Fire on a Stem and begged her to keep it. She did, taped it to the inside of the last page with the caption, "Let them keep their small flames, even if they forget why they matter." Back then, he had wonder in his eyes. Now he had ambition, an ambition without brakes. If you ever find yourself needing to outsmart someone you love, Mom once told me, it means they've already started lying to themselves. I didn't want to outsmart him, but I wasn't willing to lose the company Mom built on trust and deliberate choices just to preserve the illusion that my brother could be different. So I called Cameron. He didn't ask questions. He just nodded and started typing. For 3 nights straight, we worked after hours. Me from my home office, him from the server room with a thermos of coffee that smelled like burnt almonds. He built the framework for protocol kinship, and I designed the contents. Client records with minor but crucial errors, proposals with just enough accuracy to look real, and metadata that glowed under audit but rang hollow to the trained eye. Every file was watermarked invisibly. Every download pinged a silent tracker. "Should we make it more obvious?" Cameron asked once, "in case he doubts?" "No," I said. "He won't doubt. He's been waiting for confirmation that he deserves more. All we have to do is give him exactly what he thinks he's earned. The saddest part wasn't the strategy. It was how familiar the process felt, like cleaning up after someone in advance, just to avoid the explosion. One night, Patricia stopped by while I was reviewing the final test copy of the shadow system. She didn't say anything at first, just sat down beside me in the glow of the desk lamp. "I had a cousin once," she said quietly. "We gave him every chance, hired him, trained him, even covered his debts when he stole. You know what he said when it all came out?" I shook my head. He said we should have known better than to trust him, like it was our fault for believing. I looked at her. "What did you do?" "We let him go. Some people don't want a second chance. They want proof that the first one was a mistake." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. She patted my hand and stood. "Sometimes," she added at the door, "you give someone every chance just to prove they never wanted it." 2 weeks later, it happened. October 18th, 2:03 a.m. The alert pinged my phone with a soft vibration. I had been half asleep on the couch, still in work clothes. The moment I saw the notification, I sat up, pulse steady but cold. USB transfer detected. Protocol kinship. Full extraction. Cameron messaged 2 minutes later. He took the whole set. Time-stamped, traced. Want me to lock his account? I stared at the screen, then typed, "No." Let him finish. Dylan was in the office. Alone. The logs showed he bypassed the internal firewall using an elevated access token, one I had let him find, embedded in a forgotten folder labeled Executive Review Drafts. He copied everything. And then, 36 minutes later, he walked out. The security cam in the lobby showed him pause at the glass door, adjusting his coat. He looked proud, focused, like he had just crossed some invisible finish line. I let him walk. Let him carry the weight of victory, because sometimes the heaviest burden isn't guilt, it's the belief that you got away with it. I sat there in the stillness, surrounded by the whirring hush of the office coming back to sleep. I opened Mom's notebook again, found the page with the maple leaf. I whispered, "He forgot," and I cried, not out of betrayal, not even out of anger, but because I had seen the moment coming and still hoped he'd pull back. He didn't. He didn't knock. He barged in like a storm chasing thunder, soaked to the elbows, eyes blazing. The USB drive in his hand was clutched like a weapon. His voice cracked through the room before I even looked up. "What the hell did you do, Marianne?" Outside, rain blurred the skyline like a painting left too long in the water. Behind Dylan, the glass walls of my office glowed with the distorted lights of downtown Seattle. Inside, everything felt still. Too still. I set down my pen without speaking. He was panting slightly, not from exertion, but from anger, trying to outrun itself. His hair was windswept, his coat clung to his shoulders, and the shadows under his eyes had deepened since the last time I saw him. He slammed the USB onto my desk. "You think this is funny?" he barked. "Every single client bounced. Every email, every phone call. You fed me garbage. You made me look like a damn fool." I looked at the drive for a moment before meeting his eyes. "Sit down, Dylan." "I'm not sitting." "Sit." My tone was even, quiet. The kind of quiet that made people listen. The kind I'd inherited from Mom. The kind that always made a room feel colder when used. He hesitated, then pulled the chair back and dropped into it with a bitter scoff. "I trusted you," he muttered. "I believed I could build something of my own. You took that from me." I slid a folder toward him. Inside, timestamps, server logs, screenshots, digital footprints. Cameron had done a meticulous job. Dylan didn't open it. "You started accessing confidential folders 6 weeks ago," I said. "You used intern credentials to bypass your clearance. You downloaded an entire database at 2:03 a.m. 2 weeks ago. You presented proposals to 3 firms based on information you didn't have permission to touch." His jaw clenched. "You set me up." I nodded. Yes. He blinked. The admission threw him off balance. I knew what you were doing, I continued. I saw it in the way you hovered at meetings, the way you asked the interns about permissions, the way you stopped asking and just started taking. So you planned this? He hissed. No, I said softly. I hoped you'd stop before I had to. He sat back, eyes flicking toward the window, toward the storm he'd walked through to get here. I didn't mean to steal anything, he mumbled. I just wanted a head start. You got one, I said. A clean one. When I gave you that role, you had an open door, Dylan. You didn't have to break in. He let out a dry laugh. I was never really inside, was I? You were, but you wanted more than a seat. You wanted the throne. I paused. You didn't just try to beat me, I added. You tried to overwrite everything Mom built. That made him flinch. I pulled something else from the drawer, a slim leather-bound notebook, the cover faded but still dignified. I set it gently at the edge of the desk, just within his reach. The page it was open to, Recovering from Mistakes. He stared at it. Mom used to write at night when she couldn't sleep, I said. She told me once that writing her failures down made them feel less permanent. Dylan didn't say anything. His hands flexed, clenched, relaxed. What do you want from me? He asked finally. I want nothing, I said, but you have a choice. He looked up. You can walk out of here, I said, and I'll send all of this. I gestured to the folder, the logs, the USB, to legal. You'll be discredited publicly, permanently. His face drained. Or, I continued, you can stay. He narrowed his eyes. You'll start from the bottom. No title, no office, no access to anything strategic. You'll be supervised, retrained, and watched. You'll have to rebuild trust, one task at a time. His lips parted, but nothing came out. It won't be easy, I said. It's not supposed to be. And if I fail again, then you'll leave, and that'll be the end of it. But if you try, genuinely try, you'll have earned a place again. Not because you're my brother, but because you're someone I can trust. He slumped slightly, like something inside him had finally cracked open. The anger hadn't left, but it was no longer driving. You think I deserve a second chance? I leaned back, crossing my arms. Number. But I think you might need one. He looked down at his hands. The same hands that used to build Lego towers next to mine, the same hands that now held a future fractured in two. I don't know what to say, he whispered. Then don't say anything yet. I stood and walked to the side table, poured a fresh cup of coffee, black, strong, no sugar. The same blend I'd been drinking every morning since the day we scattered Mom's ashes off Alki Beach. I placed it in front of him. He stared at the mug, unmoving. I need time, he said finally. I nodded. Start by remembering who you were before you wanted to win. He didn't take the coffee, but he didn't walk out either. He showed up the next morning 15 minutes early. No designer suit, no practiced grin, no grand entrance. Just a plain navy sweater, worn jeans, and a simple notebook clutched in his hand like it was the only thing tethering him to the moment. He didn't speak when he walked past the glass wall into the open floor, just nodded at the front desk, found an empty desk in the admin pod, and sat down. For a while, no one knew what to make of it. Patricia eyed him from the hallway like a hawk circling low. Cameron kept a silent log open, tracking everything, though I'd asked him not to flag anything unless necessary. I stood by the mezzanine railing, watching from above as Dylan opened his laptop and began typing. No fanfare, no muttering under his breath, no signs of frustration or ego, just steady keystrokes, like he was digging his way back towards something. Mom once told us, the first real apology is showing up to fix what you broke, without being asked. Dylan didn't apologize, but that morning he did exactly what she meant. The first thing he submitted was a breach report. It was supposed to be a few paragraphs, a bullet list. Cameron and I expected a 2-page formality. Instead, it was 24 pages long. He detailed every login, every folder accessed, every file downloaded. He named the interns he questioned, the times he stayed late, the documents he printed. He added footnotes citing what he thought he was doing versus what he now understood he had done. The last line read, "I confused ambition with entitlement. I knew the difference once the silence hit me harder than the failure." Cameron printed it out. Patricia read it twice. I waited. February passed quietly. Dylan sat with the interns most days, helping them draft onboarding packets. He asked questions in team training, took notes during Patricia's ethics reviews, and stopped cutting corners. He didn't speak much at meetings, but when he did, it was deliberate. "Slow work makes deep roots," he said once to a new hire fumbling with a client call script. The room stilled. It was something Mom used to say, word for word. Later that day, I found the phrase handwritten on the whiteboard in the intern room. Nobody had erased it by the end of the week. By March, he proposed a new idea: ethics in action, a toolkit for helping clients make decisions aligned with their stated values, not just surface pledges, but structural guidance, hiring protocols, accountability checklists, equity policy samples. He included case studies, some of which mirrored his own recent missteps. He sent the draft to Patricia first. Her reply, "Not bad. Let's test it in onboarding week." That was Patricia speak, for this might be something real. One Friday afternoon in late March, Dylan flagged a clause buried in a subcontract. It was buried deep, legal language so vague it could have cost us a significant breach penalty. He didn't fix it himself. He walked the paper to Patricia's office, sat down, and said, "I think this is outside my lane, but I wanted to ask before ignoring it." Patricia told me later she nodded and didn't say a word. But when he left, she closed her laptop and stared out the window for 10 minutes. "He's earning his way," she said. I received weekly updates, not just from Cameron or Patricia, but from the team itself. It started small. Sticky notes on my desk. Dylan stayed to help with the audit summary. He caught a typo in the vendor email. We avoided a miscommunication. Then longer ones. He rewrote the intern guide, made it clearer. He sat with Jenna while she panicked about the Davidson prep, helped her through it. Piece by piece, brick by brick. Late in April, just after the quarterly meeting, there was a knock on my office door. It was after hours. The sky was pinking into dusk and most of the office had cleared out. Dylan stepped in, quiet. He wasn't holding anything. Not a pitch, not a plan. Just himself. "I wasn't trying to destroy you," he said, voice low. "I was trying to prove I mattered." The words landed softly but carried weight. I looked up at him. He looked older than he had in January, not tired but changed. "You always mattered," I replied. "The mistake was thinking you had to burn the house down to get a room in it." He smiled a little. The first real one in weeks. I stood and handed him a folder, one I'd been working on quietly since March. On the front, Startup Division Draft Proposal. He opened it, skimming quickly, then stopped. "This is real?" he asked. I nodded. "It's a sandbox, a clean slate. Not redemption, not reward, just a foundation. If you want to build something that proves you've changed, build it right." He looked down at the folder again. "I will," he said. "No shortcuts this time." I gestured to the notebook he'd been carrying the past few weeks. "Still journaling?" He nodded. That night, after he left, I stopped by the intern room to lock up. His notebook was sitting on the table, the corner of a maple leaf poked from the back page. I recognized it. The one he picked outside Mom's first office, the one she pressed into her journal when we were kids. He had moved it, pressed it into the back of his own. On the inside cover, written in firm pen, "Not shortcuts, just steps." And for the first time since we buried Mom, I felt like maybe, just maybe, her legacy wasn't something I had to carry alone. 6 months ago, I watched Dylan walk out of this building with a USB drive full of lies and a head full of pride. Tonight, I'm watching him stand beneath a canopy of string lights, laughing with clients over sparkling cider, shaking hands with the kind of quiet integrity I used to wonder if he'd ever find. The rooftop garden buzzed with low conversation and laughter, the soft clink of glassware and the subtle hum of jazz from the corner quartet. The Seattle skyline glowed gold in the August dusk, casting long reflections across the bay. It was the kind of evening Mom would have described as hopeful air. I stood near the railing, fingers curled around the edges of a note card with the speech I'd rewritten 3 times. Ready? Patricia appeared beside me, holding 2 flutes of ginger kombucha. She handed one to me, then sipped hers. "As I'll ever be," I said. "You kept the name a secret from almost everyone," she noted. I smiled. I figured 6 months of transformation deserved one final surprise. She nodded toward Dylan, who was deep in conversation with one of our longest-standing clients. He looked different now, not just the clothes or the calmer eyes, but the way he listened. He wasn't trying to be impressive anymore. He was just trying to be present, and it showed. When I stepped up to the small stage and adjusted the mic, a hush fell over the crowd. I saw familiar faces, employees who had stood by me during the worst of it, clients who trusted us through uncertainty, and a team that had become more than just colleagues. I took a breath. Thank you all for being here tonight. This firm has always believed in the power of integrity, not as a slogan, but as a daily practice. It's not the fastest path. It's not always the most glamorous, but it's the one that lasts. There were quiet nods, murmurs of agreement. That's why I'm proud to announce the official launch of our new division, dedicated entirely to helping startups build ethical foundations from the very beginning. I paused, then smiled. And leading this division will be someone who knows firsthand how hard-earned integrity truly is. Someone who made mistakes and then did the harder thing, faced them, learned from them, and rebuilt himself from the inside out. Dylan froze mid-sip of his drink. Please join me in congratulating our new Director of Startup Ethics, Dylan Whitmore. There was a beat of stunned silence, then applause. Genuine, sustained, growing applause. Dylan looked like he wasn't sure whether to smile or disappear. His eyes met mine, searching for some confirmation that this wasn't a cruel joke. I gave him a small nod. Patricia clapped beside him, steady and proud. Cameron whistled low and mouthed, "Well earned." When Dylan finally stepped forward, he did so slowly, shoulders squared. Not with arrogance, but with reverence. He didn't say anything, just took the mic, said thank you, and stepped back. That was enough. As the crowd dispersed into small clusters again, I pulled him aside near the caterer's table, away from the noise. "You didn't have to do this," he said quietly. "You already gave me a second chance." I held his gaze. Mom once wrote, "One day the person you forgive may become the person you depend on." I think she saw this coming. Maybe not exactly, but something like it. He exhaled. "I didn't deserve this." "No one earns forgiveness," I said, "but you did earn this chance." A small box sat beside the guest book. I picked it up and handed it to him. Inside was Mom's desk plaque. Joan Whitmore, founder, integrity before everything. Next to it, a framed letter, her last. His hand trembled slightly as he touched the frame. "She kept everything," he whispered, "even when I didn't." I nodded. He looked up. "Thank you." "Don't thank me," I said. "Build something that lasts." The sun dipped lower, casting a golden shimmer over the rooftop tiles. The music played on, soft and nostalgic. Before we left that evening, I stopped by the new lobby downstairs. It smelled of fresh paint and eucalyptus from the arrangement the interns had placed at reception. On the wall behind the desk, the new logo gleamed under recessed lights. Whitmore and Company. Below it, the tagline read, "Built on trust, rebuilt with purpose." Beside it, framed in simple walnut wood, was Mom's photo. She stood in front of her first office, arms crossed, smile tired but determined. This version was new, digitally restored, and now featuring 2 more people standing beside her. Dylan. Me. We had laughed during that photo years ago over something one of us said, probably about coffee or printers. I hung the frame gently, making sure it was level. As I stepped back, I felt something settle inside me. Not closure, exactly, but peace. Because maybe the biggest legacy isn't what we build the first time. It's what we choose to rebuild. Together. That night, as the lights of the city shimmered behind us, I realized it wasn't about winning or losing. It was about remembering who we are when the noise fades. Trust, once broken, doesn't always return the same way, but sometimes, when love is patient and boundaries are firm, it can grow back stronger, like a tree that leans but doesn't fall. In families, we don't just inherit names or memories. We inherit the chance to try again. If this story reminded you of someone you've forgiven, or wish you could, feel free to share your thoughts below. Sometimes, the most powerful healing begins with simply being heard.